Mitch Berger out of here fast. He's got some duties, so we're going to do a quick 5 minutes with him, segment 2. You have a very good memory. Let me read you the AP story from that that night game that you mentioned. Despite 5 turnovers to none for Green Bay and 11 penalties for 129 yards, the Vikings were in position to win it on Gary Anderson's 33-yard field goal attempt in a driving rain on the final play of the fourth quarter. Holder Mitch Berger couldn't handle a poor snap by Mitch Palmer, and Tyrone Williams picked off Berger's desperation pass at the 5 as time expired. Had Berger spiked the snap, instead of jumping up and rolling right, the Vikings would have had at least 3 seconds left for another attempt. Here's the quote from you. If I wasn't an idiot, I would have spiked the ball to get another shot at it. For some reason, it didn't cross my mind. So your memory is very good. The quote is classic Mitch Berger, holding yourself accountable. And that's the game where it was that freaky pass to Antonio Freeman, where Chris Dishman started celebrating after he deflected it, thinking it was incomplete, never hit the ground, bounces off the back of Freeman's shoulder as he rolls over. He tips it into his chest before he goes to the ground, jumps up, fakes Robert Griffith out, and goes into the end zone. That was the game.
Well, yeah, I'll give you another little classic Mitch Berger, which is, I did always take responsibility for things, even when they weren't totally my fault. But the little guy with the number 1 on his jersey never did. He should have slowed down and kicked it. The hold got up in time, and he ran by it because he didn't want to miss. And he, instead of trying to slow down and kick the ball, and in the paper, then you stick up for your teammate and you don't say that.
Yeah.
But that's a fact.
Yeah, that's good.
And number 1 never took responsibility for a miss ever.
That's interesting to hear.
It was always looking for somebody else. And so, yeah, that's I got a few stories of that. But yeah, no, that was me sticking up for my teammates and sticking up for Mitch Palmer and putting it on myself.
Right.
But it was a tough snap to hold. I'm not putting Mitch Palmer under the bus.
Sure.
He didn't kick the ball. I'm not putting him under the bus because that's not the way I was raised as a football player. But I'll tell you now, a bunch of years later, yeah, he should have kicked the ball.
Should have kicked it. Well, that's a very telling story about the mindset of some kickers as opposed to others.
And I got one more for you, too.
Yeah,
I got one more for you, too, real quick.
Sure.
I don't want to be the one sitting here pumping down our receiver, our DBs, saying they weren't very good. I sucked in that Giants game. I think I had one good punt. I told you earlier when we talked earlier today, I had one good punt and like 5 crappy ones. And so I stunk in that game as well.
Yeah.
So let me not absolve myself of anything either. So
You're good
I had lots of good games for the Vikings, but that wasn't one of them.
All right, you got to get out of here in about 2 minutes. So let's bring it to today. What is the official Mitch Berger position on how the Vikings should move forward at the quarterback position? Are you fine with continuing to nurture JJ and let him grow, or are you in the group that says you got to bring in a veteran as an option that's a viable option to be a starting quarterback? What do you think?
Well, I think you got to bring one in if you find the right one, not do it just to do it.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I loved what's the guy that's with the Colts now?
Daniel Jones.
Man, I was wishing that he was going to stick around.
Yeah.
That was the guy that I was really wanting to stick around. And Kevin O'Connell, I still fully believe in him. And if he thinks that our quarterback is what he thought he was when he recruited him, sometimes you miss. But I didn't say that that's the case yet. Mm-hmm. And I trust in him. And I'm going to be honest with you. I may be wrong. A bunch of us may be wrong. But I didn't want Sam Darnold back. I didn't want to pay him all that money.
Yeah,
I've seen what he did in the playoffs. I've seen what he did in the big games. I've seen what he did when it counted. And to me, it's not about the regular season. It's what you do when the lights are the brightest. Yep. And I feel like he shrinks when that happens. And with that being said, I like the decision. I'm not sure I agree. I might have been wrong as well. We'll see how Seattle does. And we'll see if he grows and see if he gets better. Maybe you got to be in that position a few times and then you grow. That happens a lot.
It does.
And Sam Darnold has a chance to prove everybody wrong.
Mm-hmm. That's the beauty of it. Yeah, and look, I think they clearly wanted Jones to stay. They made him a viable offer, but I think he knew they wanted JJ to start. JJ McCarthy to start, and he knew if he went to Indianapolis, that job was open because Anthony Richardson had already been, there 2 years. And they were more, I think they were readier to actually, allow someone else perhaps to win the job. I think that's what broke the tie. on where
Well,
Daniel Jones ended up.
he's in that quarterback room too, and he sees what Kevin thinks about our quarterback, and he knows that he wants him. So he can feel that he's the second guy in the building.
Exactly.
I mean, if you're going to get rid of a 14-win quarterback, you're definitely getting rid of a guy that has 0 wins for you.
Good point.
You know, so he knew who had the upper hand on the job, and that might make it tough to get another guy in as well, because they also might still think that and want to go somewhere else where they have a better chance at the job. A place like, say, Pittsburgh, where there's nobody with the job.
Yeah, great point. All right, look, I don't want to make you late for practice, so we'll let you go. It's great to catch up with you. I'm reminded again why we should have stayed in touch a little bit more recently than this, so we might bug you again, okay?
It's fun talking football again. Yeah, I just ordered a 3-wood cover, Vikings cover, so I can think about the Vikings every day.
There you go. Even better. Thanks, Mitch. Be well.
All right, guys.
Thanks, man. Mitch Berger, former Vikings punter and kicker, with more of his usual. He's never stopped being honest. He's fun to have on. How about Kevin Seifert? We're going to get to him in a minute. If you have questions for Seifert, just text him in with all the 41 donut memories, which I am saving. Meantime,
Fan wants to give you a shot to win bonus bucks. It is our national cash contest, and the keyword is pay. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword pay.
if I say 41 donut, Kevin Seifert, what's the first thing that comes into your mind?
The first thing is how I was not even settled into my seat. I don't think I even had my first bag of popcorn yet, and the game was over. It was 14-0 with 2 minutes and 13 seconds into the game. And you have never seen a more insurmountable 14-point advantage than that one, based on the energy in the stadium, the lack of energy on the Vikings sideline, and just the way they had gone about that 14-0, getting that 14-0 lead on the part of the Giants. So that's my biggest memory, is just that I don't think I can think of a single thing between 14-0 and being in the locker room afterwards talking to Randy Moss, where he eventually had the infamous, he's the one who made up the term 41 donut. And it was the weirdest press conference, because I think Sean Jensen from the Pioneer Press asked every single question, because that was just kind of the way Randy was. And I remember being in that scrum, and I remember some Minnesota media members, I think, changing their flights to be able to leave early during the game, because it was, instead of going to Miami or wherever the Super Bowl was going to be that year, they just went on home. But it was, I still have never covered, certainly a playoff game where the outcome was so little in doubt so early in the game.
I think it was 34 donut at half.
Yeah.
And then
it was like in youth sports when they have a running clock at the end. It felt like there was a running clock in the second half.
Well, I think the Giants had like an 11-minute drive to end the game.
Yeah.
Because we just didn't seem interested in doing anything about any of it. So is it, my recollection of that week, having also attended that game, was the Vikings felt cocky that it was their game easily. And that, now I'm not saying that's what caused them to play as poorly as they did, but I didn't think there was any fear or any loathing about playing the New York Giants, even if the game was in New York.
Yeah, and there was some of that. Frankly, some of that, that was when Sid Hartman was still in his heyday, and Sid was writing it very confidently, and I think people just were kind of building off of that. Sid thinks they're going to win. Sid has, the connections that are telling him what the matchups are going to be like. And I do think that internally the Vikings thought they'd started that year great. The second half of that year, they were not quite as competitive, but then I think they had New Orleans in the first playoff game, and they beat them pretty handily. And so they felt like they were back on track. And then they went to New York, and that's what happened. So I think internally they felt like I don't remember sensing that they felt any more confident than any team that I think they were the number 2 seed that year would feel going into play the NFC Championship game. But I don't know that they were as outwardly confident as maybe it might seem in retrospect.
It was interesting to hear Berger just destroy Gary Anderson. Now, my guess is...
You loved it.
I did love it. And my guess is Chris Carter would have loved it, too, if he'd heard it. And the allegation basically was he's talking about the Monday night game against the Packers in the rain, which I didn't attend. You did, obviously. And that freaky finish where they had a chance to win it at the end of regulation. And Berger admits, I panicked. I had trouble with the snap, and I just should have fallen on the ball because we still had time to kick because we didn't try the field goal on fourth down, and I didn't think of it. I was too stupid. Yeah. But what he's alleging is a more composed or dedicated kicker could have still tried to make the kick, but that basically Anderson didn't want to chance it because he didn't want to look bad. It was a pretty direct allegation from Mitch Berger. Yeah, and you know these they always say these holders and kickers are tightly connected, and I was 25 years later, he still holds a grudge. I was a young beat writer then, and I don't think I picked up on the nuance of like should Gary Anderson have kicked or was it a bad snap? Was it a bad hold? You know, I know that Berger, you know, he was a really good athlete. He kicked long distance field goals for them. And I remember like we all kind of were like, I bet he liked the idea of throwing a touchdown pass to win a game. You know, he's one of those kind of guys. For sure. And so, and the funny thing is, and you can ask your guy, Robert Smith, about this. But what I recall is that once the dust had settled from that game, in the locker room, and as you know, Robert and Mitch were and I think are still tight. And so Robert Smith was jokingly calling Mitch Berger Lucy after the Peanuts character who always is holding for Charlie Brown to kick and then picks up the snap at the last second and makes him go. Well, what Berger told us this time, I think it's the same thing he told us last time we commemorated 41 Donut, which has been a while actually, but I think the listeners demanded we do it this time. It's 25 years. So you got to do it. You begrudgingly agree. I always listen to the listeners. You know that. Yes. That in the second quarter, as it approaches 34-0 at halftime, he, as in Mitch and Robert, are planning where are we going? Where are we going on vacation? The Australia trip. Exactly it. What turned out to be the Australia trip because there was really nothing else to do at that point. As much as fans don't want to hear that. No, and I'm always, that's funny you mentioned that because, there's been, a lot of these hard knock, NFL Films is finding a new life in these hard knocks shows on HBO. And it's always funny when they show what people are talking about on the sidelines. Or during practice when you're on the field and when you're covering a practice or you're watching a game on TV, you just assume they're all talking about like, okay, on the next play, you're going to line up here and I'm going to line up here and we're going to run this and run that. And half the time they're talking about, the weather, last summer when they went on a trip, or they're talking about, where's the nearest Chipotle or whatever. Yes. And so, and there was just a one the Vikings did with Jalen Redmond, where he was talking about there was something that had nothing to do with the actual game. I think the game had been decided. There was another one with Justin Jefferson the other day where he's looking for an earring that fell off, and Ty Chandler found it. And so these people eat that stuff up. I know, but like what I'm always like shocked by is that football, like we all have this like it's so serious, and there's the levels of complexity to the schemes, and everybody has to study, and they're in meetings all day, and like gosh, they must have to like talk through things all the time, and then like they're just like anybody who's sitting at a bar watching a game talking about whatever comes to their mind. Athletic Fat Guy has checked in. He writes, Dan, I was at 41 Donut. I was on the field pregame. By the time I got a hot dog and made my way to my seat, it was already 14-0. Yeah. It was in an instant. I think within 5 minutes. It was 2 minutes, and I think it was even less. I think it was 12. I clipped the part of the box score that gets to 14-0 and put it on Twitter. And I think the second touchdown was like 12 minutes and 47 seconds left in the first quarter. So if people remember, the Giants get the opening kickoff and they go down the field in like 4 plays and they score on like a 40-yard pass. And then the next kickoff, the Vikings fumble, Giants recover, and then score on the first play of their second possession. So with like 12 minutes, 47 seconds left in the first quarter, it's already 14-0. I'm looking for the play-by-play. I can't find it, but that sounds right. Yeah, it's on I'm sure on my Twitter account. I'm sure you'll never. Yeah, I'm sure you'll never forget. I said, obviously, there are games in Vikings history that are more devastating. But I think for sheer absurdity, given, getting humiliated to that degree as quickly as they did against a very ordinary team with a very ordinary starting quarterback, I don't think that can be topped in Vikings history. Do you?
No, and like even and maybe, and I don't know what the stats are in terms of games, close games or not, but like it just feels like in this particular era of football, even if a team got down the Bears were down 21-3, I think,
21-3
in the fourth quarter, and so like you're down 14-0 in the first quarter, you don't like it's not over. Like the NFL is not constructed that way right now. And
now you've just triggered Brett Blakemore, who's now
Blakemore's
in the
here now. I
chair
didn't even know
because
that.
Guardsy had to leave.
Had to bring that up.
He just
I
triggered
have my back to you.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I thought Guardsy was still
the
there.
baton
Sorry,
exchange is taking place.
Okay, good to know. So I don't like looking back on it. I think probably the surprising and part of it was just how uneventful the final.
Yeah.
So what would that have been? 7 minutes of 57 minutes of the game. Because like in a championship game, I just can't even conceive that the football script writers would allow a game to be so uncontested at such a high level.
Did you ever pursue, as a reporter or otherwise, the conspiracy theory, which went on, which I actually think was started because somebody with another team alleged in another game during that Giants run.
Dan Minnesota clipped the Judd Zulgad story about
that's right.
it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That in fact, that was part of why it was so one-sided. Did you ever pursue that? Did you think there was any validity to it?
No, it was like a Toronto paper,
that's
Globe
what it was,
and Mail,
Globe and Mail,
and said that I forget who it was, whoever the Giants had played in the previous round.
Week. Yep.
Had alleged that, and I looked into it to the extent of like, how could you even do that? Like, what would be the circumstances where you had some shortwave radio or whatever the technology would have been at the time to hear the signals or to even be able to steal the because I don't think I think the Vikings' offensive signals would have gone, but their defensive signals weren't even electronic. I think that I don't think that at that time
there was anything to steal.
The green dot that everybody talks about now, there was no defensive green dot.
Yeah.
So I think in those days that was the old where defensive coordinators were doing the hand signals, or if they subbed somebody in, they could tell that. And so I didn't even understand what radio signals they could have been picking up. Now, did they know what the Vikings hand signals were?
That's possible.
Did that help
but that
them?
always is possible.
And then did they use their radio, coach the
right.
quarterback to make a play call based on that? That's the same as like sign stealing in baseball.
Correct.
Like we all agreed that that's not even really cheating or whatever. And so I remember being perplexed about how that would even functionally have occurred.
I really believe that had legs because it seemed
That
so
they knew what was coming,
preposterous how one-sided it was. I said, well, there's got to be some other rational explanation that just goes beyond you played this badly and let the Giants play that well.
I mean, it certainly made sense when you see them slicing through the field the way they did.
82 plays to 41. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the present on the Minnesota Vikings.
Sure.
Seifert is in studio. We'll pause here. I will save a bunch of the 41 Donut texts for probably the 5 o'clock hour of the show. Kessler is out sick this week, so we'll continue with Seifert on the Purple.
If you want to chime in what's happening with your favorite KFAN shows, you can. It's really easy. You can make your voice heard on the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. So let us know what you have to say by texting your message at 64686. It's 64686. Standard text message and data rates apply.
It was interesting to listen to Mitch Berger talk about the current Vikings quarterback situation. And, I asked him, all right, are you on board with what appears to be the strategy, which is to try to bring somebody in, a veteran nature? And he said, well, that depends on who it is.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is true. And it's not as easy as it sounds. And then he brought up the name of Daniel Jones. He was hoping Jones would have stayed, which is something you and I talked about. You wrote about, extensively, very recently on that deal. So let me ask you, I don't even know Daniel Jones' contract situation. Is it insane to consider him a possibility next year coming off that injury? Or is it just assumed that if he's going to come back at all, he's going to come back with the Colts where he had some success?
Yeah, I think he's expected to be ready when the season starts, if not training camp. He had a 1-year deal, so he could go to free agency. They could franchise him. If they want him to be their starter, which at this very moment, it's hard to know who else would be the Colts starter. Yeah. They might end up just franchising him. It sounds as though, based on their postseason press conference, that not only is there a lot of interest, but it sounded like from ownership that there's some, it's timed. Not, I don't know if the owner talked about Daniel Jones, but like the coach and the GM are kind of at the end of the stick in terms of how much leeway they have to produce a winner. And so if you're in a situation where you got to win next year and you're not going to bring back the veteran quarterback that got you most of your wins the previous year, then that would be surprising.
Okay, I want to get your Jackal impression of what the two chief brand wizards said yesterday regarding the future at the quarterback position. Because what I got, Alec Lewis joined us yesterday, and it sounds like Alec Lewis took it literally that they're definitely going to bring in competition. I thought the rhetoric was too mealy-mouthed, even by their standards, to where you could really declare that definitively, because I still think they tried to play it, KOC tried to play it both ways. Well, more depth is, the more you have in the quarterback room, the better, which is very different than saying, we're opening this baby up. It's wide open for competition. So how did you interpret what they said, and what do you think they really intend to do?
I mean, as best as I can tell and know at this point, I feel like they're going to run back the 2025 offseason plan, which is to try to pair the guy they drafted number 10 overall with somebody who is good enough to start if he's not. And that's why they thought they wanted Daniel Jones, and they put a lot of work into it and thought that they would get him. So I think that, while I could not find anyone and haven't found anyone to tell me that they definitely don't want to pursue a Joe Burrow or a Lamar Jackson or whoever else might shake loose in terms of just a guy that would absolutely positively come in here as the unquestioned starter. But it feels as though they're just going to try to do a better job of what they intended to do last year and get someone who, if JJ gets hurt or if JJ has not made enough progress to their liking, can give them a chance to push this roster in on a deep playoff run.
Do you believe, again, if you attached lie detector, polygraph machine to them, or let's just say to KOC, do you think in his mind he would, if he's being honest, even though we don't expect him to say this publicly, is more concerned and less optimistic about J.J. McCarthy being the guy as much as they might have thought even going into the 2025 season on the basis of the way this season played out?
I don't think he has given up on the idea that at some point in the future, could be 2026, but more likely probably not, that he could be the guy that they envisioned when they drafted him. I think what 2025 certainly showed O'Connell is that you can't count on that coming next year, and that counting on it coming this year, proved to be the reason why they didn't make the playoffs. And they didn't intend for it to be that way, but they, as we've talked about, made some execution errors leading into that. So I don't think that he's. I think what if O'Connell learned anything about McCarthy is that there's just a lot of maybe a little more space between where he was at and is at and where he needs to be than he might have anticipated.
All right, that's fair enough. So we might as well get to it now. What the not pie in the sky, but more realistic possibilities are. For example, is Malik Willis a realistic possibility, or is he going to be perceived, whether he should be or not at this point? No, somebody's going to go after him with decent money to anoint him without any competition as their number one quarterback. So that's not a realistic. That would not be among the realistic possibilities for the Purple.
I do think he'll be pursued, and it'll just be whether Malik Willis feels like that those are places that he can succeed.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the really bad teams that are trying to throw a lot of money at quarterbacks, and he would have to decide if that's a place that he wants to go, or if he just wants to sort of take the money that's being offered. So I think that's, I've been kind of joking, but, what I've been saying is that there's only one man that can save us now, and that's Kirk Cousins. And I kind of say that jokingly because there's never just one option, but it feels like that's the high end of what's realistic. And I'm sure
You might be right.
And I'm sure I'll get it thrown in my face when they get Joe Burrow.
Is that a better option
when
than,
they get Joe Burrow for a 4th round pick? But that's where it feels to me. And I don't have any factual reporting to tell me that that's what they're zeroing in on, but I have eyes.
Is that a better option than a presumably healthier, more with the program throughout the offseason Carson Wentz?
Yeah. Yep. I think I think, and that's not a shot at Carson. I think if you asked 100 NFL personnel people, which quarterback would you choose to be? Now, is it for 2 games? It might be closer. But if you're talking about who's
half a season,
who would you sign? Who would you prefer if you were bringing in somebody who might have to play the whole season? Because that's what we're talking about, right? Whether JJ gets hurt or JJ isn't ready yet to be a playoff, caliber quarterback, then you're turning to this other guy. And I think most of those 100 would say Kirk. Between those two. Is
it time for me to give up on the A-Rod's dream? I ask it now because the guy he clearly bonded with, Mike Tomlin, is no longer the Steelers coach.
Yeah.
So I'm just asking, is it crazy to put him in the mix if indeed he says, yeah, you know what, if I can go to someplace like Minnesota, otherwise I'd retire, but Minnesota, where I wanted to go originally, I'd take a shot at that. Is that absurd?
Well, to me, you have to look at it the other way around. Would the Vikings, what would the Vikings think about that?
Well, that's what I mean. Oh, yeah, that's exactly what I mean. I think he would be interested if he's going to
play. Yeah, if he really wants to play and he's not done yet, then you would think he'd be interested. But, as I put in the story, a couple weeks ago, the Vikings front office felt like, there would be that signing Aaron Rodgers and pushing J.J. McCarthy back a year would maybe get you to the playoffs, but isn't getting you to the Super Bowl. And that, by the way, might be right. And the idea of Aaron Rodgers kind of running his version of the Vikings offense wouldn't necessarily be the most helpful for J.J., at least last year. I don't know if that would apply as much moving forward. But so I really think that it would still come down to, would the Vikings have a different point of view after seeing how things went? And I don't know if that would be the case.
We can go to 57, right? I'm not behind. I just want to be sure we've got a funky break schedule today, so I want to double check with Blakemore. This is from Jeremiah out of Edina. How much longer can Dan milk the McCarthy issue? I'm going to come to my defense as objective as I can be on myself in that this isn't said as an automatic rejection of McCarthy. It's that the issue, whether you're a McBobo or not, is real. And actually, your reporting confirmed that even last year, they wanted to hedge it a little bit more than maybe we realized at the time. And that means even more so now on the basis of the injury issue, leaving aside performance, they have to.
Yeah.
They are letting down their veteran players, including the wide receiver, if they don't give themselves another option. So none of this is milking the McCarthy issue. It's the quarterback condition for this franchise right now. It's undeniably part of the story, correct?
It's the story.
Yeah.
We don't have to go in too deeply on how important the quarterback position is to football and sports and all the other things. But this was the reason they didn't make the playoffs this year. They were a half game out as it was with having, if you take all 3 of their quarterbacks, having bottom third in the league quarterback play. If you just have average quarterback play between the 3 of those guys, or
that part's true. The half game thing's fool's gold to me because that is how it ended after they were mathematically
You're a
eliminated.
big butterfly effect guy.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you got to factor that. But I get your point. You could say throughout the season, if you have legitimate quarterback play,
Yeah, they would have won.
They're in good shape.
With people keeps talking about the Chicago game and the special teams,
Yes.
but what about all the scores they missed because of the way JJ played up until that final drive?
Yes.
Or I guess Max Bros. I don't know if anybody that they had a quarterback.
Be careful. Gargi might be listening on the way to the U.
The Seattle game was probably not going to be won regardless, but there were games before they got eliminated that if the quarterback play had been better, they wouldn't have been eliminated. Anyway,
Right.
and so we can look at it either way. But I do agree that you have to be extremely contextualized and extremely nuanced in analyzing the 5-game winning streak that got them to 9 wins.
Is it more likely, in your mind, that whatever they do at the position, it will be via a free agent signing, or do you think it is a real possibility that they could make a trade?
Yeah, I do, and I know that no one wants to give up draft picks, and I know that that's a key thing. But like this quarterback trumps it all. If there's a guy that you're convicted in, and just believe in your heart, and you have the head coach on board, and you have Josh McCown, all the people in the building who are quarterback experts on board, and it's going to take a draft pick, then to me, like, that's where you say, well, the other rules don't apply, or our desire to have as many draft picks as we can can't apply to that decision.
Did you read the text that Gargi just sent you and me? Check your text line and read it to the audience once you find it.
Keep Brosmer out of this.
So he was listening.
Well, I mean, maybe he should be if he's driving. Like, why is he texting?
I'm sure he's stopped at he's parked.
I guess some of these kids know how to text with voice to text and don't have to actually text. But we'll decide whether Brosmer gets mentioned.
There's no question.
Garzi.
No question. Well, a lot of people have Cousins fatigue. Via the text line, which wasn't surprising.
Yeah,
you might end up, but realistically, you're right. I mean, that's where it may end up going. The thing I'm always curious about is is Cousins okay with that kind of arrangement, or might he have to be because there's really no other choice at this point? I don't know how many options
there might be other choices, and we talked about this a couple years ago when he ended up going to Atlanta, that he had always picked the place where he, essentially would get the best contract. And so I don't know if what happened as a result of that to him in Atlanta has changed his thinking late in his career. There's some thought among the people that have been around him for the past couple of years that had he known what the Falcons were going to do, which was sign him and then, draft Michael Penix a couple months later, that maybe that would have changed the calculus in his mind. And if you're going to be, sort of a caretaker to a young quarterback, then you might as well just do it with the place that you know the people better and have a level of trust that you may not have. But now the Falcons have changed their coach, and their fired their coach and general manager. So who knows what they're going to be thinking or what that new guy is going to want. But we do know that Kirk and the Falcons changed his contract in a way that makes it much easier for them to part ways in the beginning of free agency. So that it feels like that was an intentional thing, that independent of what the coaching decision is going to be.
Saul and Blaine, when you have a talent like Justin Jefferson, you're paying him what you are. You give yourself the best chance to make the playoffs as long as you have him. We completely botched it this year. I don't think McCarthy is our long-term guy either. My hope is we would go big game hunting, try to get a trade done for a Burrow, Herbert, Jackson, etc. Rodgers should be an option, the number one option, if we cannot get a trade done. That's Saul in Blaine.
So Rodgers should be the number one option?
He's saying if you can't get one of those bigger fish.
Yeah, the Herbert thing is fun just because of the Harbaugh-McCarthy thing. I don't know what McCarthy or what Harbaugh thinks of J.J. McCarthy as a pro. We know he loved him in college and that it worked out great for both of those guys. But I also people. People talk about, Berger was talking about Sam Darnold and how he plays in the playoffs, and I think there's starting to be a pretty long record of Justin Herbert in the playoffs as well. It's not necessarily much better, and so. But
Herbert's the interesting one to me because I threw it by Lieber.
Yeah. And
Lieber said, we're playing a hypothetical game, but he said, I'd do it in a minute. I just would, and maybe I'm hesitating too much. Lieber's point was, get the quarterback whisperer with him. They're made for each other. I'm not convinced, these are his words, that the passing offense that Harbaugh was using there was really conducive to getting the best out of what he has to offer. I just worry that it's a little bit of the pretty boy syndrome where he's got the looks, he's got the arm to make all the throws, but doesn't really want to compete in the battle. I mean, you even heard Collinsworth during the game kind of say, you got to hang in there a little bit more, man. You're bailing out too fast.
Yeah.
And I don't even know. Maybe that's not fair to him. Maybe he wasn't. I mean, I know he got pounded a few times, but it's a fascinating example because he does look like he's got all the talent in the world, but I keep going, well, there's been no there in the postseason.
Justin Herbert led the league in quarterback hits. Like, he got contact. Whether it's in the pocket or running, and I don't know if he got jumpy by the end of that or if that's more a reflection of just how often he left the pocket and the contact is actually a tackle while he's running. But he's a really good athlete and he looks the part. You're right. Looks the part. And he's got the arm and apparently is very smart as well. And there's I don't know. There's no one has indicated that he's going to be available, but
plus that's $50 million or 46.
But he's young enough that you basically say that's our guy. And so they're in a position where in the evolution of their roster and the evolution of the tenure of the head coach and the general manager, that if a Justin Herbert were to become available and you're just writing it off, no, we don't need him. That you have to at least investigate it, do
what
all
the
your
cost
projection,
would be, all that stuff.
Yeah, figure out, and I'm sure they have scouting reports, and it's not like you have to start from scratch when somebody becomes available, but they would need to be prepared to at least decide, what would we need? What would we do for this?
Yeah.
Would it have to be a steal of an acquisition, or would we give up premium assets, or what? But they don't seem to be in a position that if any. Certainly and I would say everybody should agree he's a top half of the NFL quarterback,
no question.
Whether it's top 10 or top 15 or what's top 16. But if somebody, even of with the concerns we just talked about, become available and you're in a position where you have to consider it.
All right, here's the choice now as we hit the top of the hour break. You can leave now and force an unprepared Brett Blakemore to do a top 5 at 5, or you can bail him out by hanging for one more segment.
I was planning to be here anyway, so let's do it.
We'll do that. Here's my idea, Blakemore. You're not going to be totally off the hook. I still think you should come up with at least a mini 520 sports fix.
I can do that.
I think you can do that because now you got a little extra time. Is that fair?
That's
All right,
fair.
We'll come back. If you have more questions for Seifert, we'll probably expand the discussion beyond the Vikings. There's more Vikings to get to, but I want to talk about his reaction to a fairly entertaining wild card weekend and what might be coming up next. And all the coaching changes as well. Seifert in studio. Reach him via the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line at 64686.